Welcome to AP Workflow Training. In this video, I'm going to show you how to upload invoice documents and other backup to SharePoint for the online AP invoice approval process. You'll see in front of us the form that we're going to fill out. To access this form, there are a number of different ways that you can get to it. From the hub, you can navigate to the AP workflow page and click on the link that says Upload AP Documents to SharePoint. From Nintex, you can click on Submit a Form, and you'll see the link to upload documents in your forms list. If you click on the star next to it, your form link will also appear on your main dashboard page under Favorite Forms. And finally, from within MRI, when you are entering or viewing any invoice, there will be a link that says SharePoint Add Documents, and you can click that as well to upload either the invoice or any other additional documents you have. So let's talk about the form itself. The first thing we're going to do is choose our document type. For the purposes of the workflow, an invoice is any document that tells us who's requesting payment, for what products or services, and how much we owe. That's normally a traditional invoice from our supplier, but it could also be an email or any other document that you have containing that information. From here, you'll see that depending on the document type we choose, different options become available. If I choose contract, a red star appears telling me that the contract field is now a required field and I must put in the MRI contract number. A similar thing happens when we click on purchase order. We must enter the MRI PO number. For today, I'm going to demonstrate what happens when we upload an invoice. You'll see here the document upload section allows you to add a maximum of one document at a time. And that's so that each document we upload can be applied the proper document type. You can choose Select Files and browse for the file that you want, or you can simply drag and drop any PDF or JPEG document into the box to be uploaded. From here, you'll enter your invoice number, supplier ID, and project ID. When we enter the supplier number and hit Tab, you'll note that the MRI invoice number automatically fills in, and it's assumed to be the same as our original invoice number. Some of you will know that in certain instances, we need to remove special characters or append other information for MRI to the invoice number. And so if that's the case, you can enter the invoice number used in MRI in this box if it's different than your original number. To choose your supplier ID, you can start typing in the lookup box any part of the 6-digit supplier ID code or the name itself. You will notice that in some cases, for instance, if I start to look up Avison Young, that there are several Avison Young suppliers that all have the same 6-digit vendor code at the beginning. This is because we've not only brought in the original vendor name, but also any additional vendor names that might be used for additional addresses. Choose the one that best suits your invoice. And in this case for today, I'm going to use test. And you'll see that the supplier ID is automatically filled in for you in the gray box. We'll do a similar process to look up our project ID. Now the project ID is a 4-digit code that's tied to all of our buildings, companies, and entities in MRI. Today, I'm going to use Scarth Street building for our example. And when I select it, the project ID is automatically filled in for me. Please note that this project ID is used only for the purpose of applying security to the documents that you're uploading. We've tied the MRI security to these SharePoint documents so that only people who have access to view this project in MRI will be able to view the documents in SharePoint. Even though contract, purchase order, and service request are not required fields here, if your invoice does have any of these three numbers attached to it, I would encourage you to enter those in these fields as well at this point. Now, because we're entering an invoice, there's a little bit of extra information that we need to enter. This can look a little daunting, but once you get through it, it's actually quite quick to enter all the information. The business unit here is pre-filled for you based on the project code that you selected in the top section. Any entities or buildings that start with a P in the project code will be assumed to be property management or facility management invoices. You can, of course, change that if necessary, but we're going to leave it as property management for now. Next, we can tell whether the invoice is urgent or not. For the purposes of this approval workflow, you should only select yes if the invoice is intended to be paid within 1 day. This is very similar to our daily check option that we currently have on our coding slips. If there's a purchase order or contract number, you'll indicate yes, but in our case, we're going to say no. If you have any payment instructions for this invoice, such as that the check must be couriered to a specific address, or that the check should be returned to a Harvard employee before being sent out, you can put those instructions here. This is optional. It's also perfectly fine to leave this field blank. The same thing with comments. Any comments that you write here will be seen by all of the approvers and reviewers in the workflow process. But if you don't have any comments, you can leave that field blank as well. The last section is the default administrators and approvers who are going to review this invoice and sign off on it for payment. Most of the time, the default people who normally review invoices for this company or building will be pre-filled for you. If for any reason one of those rules should be different, you can select a new person by simply typing their name in the corresponding box. If the invoice has already been entered in MRI, you can select yes to skip the step that tells the AP clerk that they should enter it in MRI. Down at the bottom, if the invoice has already been pre-approved by a manager, you can select yes to skip a notification for them to approve this invoice again. If you do select yes, make sure that the manager name that appears in the gray box is the same as the manager who provided you with the pre-approval. If it's not, select a new manager just the way we did for the AP clerk above. And that's it. You're now ready to submit your document. Your document will now be uploaded to SharePoint, and notifications will begin to go out to all of the appropriate people to review and approve this invoice. If you have more documents to upload, you can click here to fill in another form, or you can simply close the tab. Thanks very much for watching.